plan to this video, just me rambling about my favorite book of the year so far. Hello my lovely friends, it's Margaret and it's time to nerd out about spoilers. As promised, I am here with my spoilery thoughts about The Wicked King because there was no way I could not make a part 2 to this video to talk about some of the things that happened in this book. And in order to do that, I think I need the book back actually. It's so pretty. I want to color that in so badly. Like, I just want to like grab my Prismacolors and go to town with this bad boy. While you're admiring this gorgeous cover, this is your chance to get out if you do not want spoilers, because there will be spoilers. I'm not apologizing for it. Okay? If you're still here after this warning, you brought it upon yourself. I kind of went through the book, looked at my tabs, wrote a whole bunch of my thoughts down, and so we're gonna go from there. And the first thing I want to start out with is the fact that Madoc literally summarizes the plot, the entire central conflict of the book, in one sentence. It's in the prologue when he's taught, like, we're seeing kind of Jude's backstory or her childhood, and he says, power is much easier to acquire than it is to hold on to. And if that is not the moral of this book, I don't know what it is, because literally every time Jude thinks she has power, something comes to like whoop it right out from underneath her feet. It's very interesting how we've been seeing this lesson of power being hard to hold on to, because it's a theme that we've been seeing since the Cruel Prince. We have Eldred, who's the High King. He ends up losing his power. We see Dane being built up to be the heir, to be the one who's going to take his crown. His power gets taken from him. Same thing. Balakin thinks that he has got this in the bag, and then whoop, here comes Jude with Cardan to steal everything out from underneath him. And then we see Jude struggling with it in this book, like trying to hold on to the power and having it taken from her at the very, very end. So I'm wondering if we're going to be seeing Cardan struggle with it a little bit, and if that might not be some of why he and Jude end up kind of teaming up again in the next book, because we know that they've got to team up again towards, or she's at least got to get to Fairy again towards the beginning of the next book. Because really there is no story if Jude is not in Fairy for most of the book. Like, that's just weird. My recent reread of The Cruel Prince and my reading of this book have me questioning a few things about Cardan's character, because we see him do the right thing cloaked a lot of the time in cruelty. I really would have liked to have explored that in this book, and we didn't necessarily. We got a lot of Cardan doing the right thing because he didn't want Jude to die. That's gonna get into the ending a little bit, which we'll talk about that at some point, but you know, some of y'all stuck around despite the spoiler warning, and so I'm not gonna get into the big major mega spoiler until further on in the video. Looking at the setup and looking at how things happen later in the book, I do wonder if there were several points in this book that I'm like, if Jude had been less heavy-handed with how she dealt with Cardan, if she had maybe asked him first instead of just automatically commanding him because she has power over him, I wonder if they couldn't have come to kind of a place of agreement a little bit sooner and maybe prevented some of the things that happened in this book. There are several times where, like, you could kind of tell that if she had asked him to do something, he would have done it because A, it was the smart thing to do, and B, because it was Jude asking. Or A, because it was Jude asking, and B, it was the smart thing to do. I mean, you know, I think those are both, like, those got intermixed several times in his mind. The one thing about the setup that bugged me, and something I made a note of, and that I'm hoping we get to see maybe improved upon or addressed or something in the next book, is Cardan's alcoholism. Like, I didn't notice it as much the first time I read it because I think I was reading it mostly to get to the point where, like, the romance was happening. That does kind of give me pause and make me worry, because that's never a good thing to have in a ruler. We have so much of European history to prove that. One of the things I really appreciated and I really liked about Jude's character in this book is that she was trying so hard to make sure that Oak got what she didn't get. And it wasn't necessarily the childhood that he should have had, but he still was having a childhood where he grew up without fear. And I think we're seeing the fact that Jude grew up continually afraid. We are seeing that. We are seeing the repercussions of that in this book. And I really like that even though she's dealing with all of this stuff, she still recognizes how his childhood would go if he was in Fairy, if he was the king of Fairy. She was trying to protect him from that and to protect him from everything that could go, like, just warp him and twist him and make him into someone who was like Jude and Cardan, because I think they both grew up with their different kinds of fear and anger and resentment and all of that. Okay, we have to mention, at least for a little bit, we need to talk about Locke and Taryn. I hate them. I want them to die. I actually, at this point, kind of hate Taryn more than I hate Locke, because Locke is a fairy, had no reason to care about Jude or Taryn until he was attached to Taryn. But Taryn is Jude's older sister by like 5 minutes, but still. Like, she is your freaking sister, and you're gonna just, like, screw her over for some fairy dude? I hate it. I feel like they're probably, because it seems like we're building towards it, or possibly, or that's just the way books go, I feel like there will be some sort of sisterly reconciliation between our 3 sisters, and I just kind of want Taryn to die. I would have wanted that reconciliation until she used Jude to trick Cardan to help Matic. Like, what the frack, Taryn? I knew you were stupid, but why are you this stupid? And I hate that she stood by while Locke played around with her sister. Like, all of that. I don't like her. I don't like her. And she's complicated. And she's probably got the same reasons for being the way she is that Jude has. And I understand that, and I probably should like her more, or feel better about her, or be sympathetic towards her, at least in some way. I don't know, but I hate her. I want her to die, and that is the end of the story. On the other hand, I really do like how the relationship between Jude and Matic is progressing, and as such as they're slowly, like, becoming more and more enemies. Like, it starts out with Jude being kind of attached to Matic and wanting his approval in the first book, and now they're like, they hate each other, and it's fantastic. I loved it because she should hate him, and he should die. He really, like, of all the characters in this book, he was the one that really should die, okay? Like, I hope he dies, and I hope she kills him. And now we're going to talk about, now that we've talked about some of my least favorite parts of the book, 2 of my least favorite parts of the book, let's talk about my favorite part of the book, which you guys know is Jude and Cardan. This book was everything I wanted and then some. Like, it was some things that I didn't ask for as well, that we didn't need to go that hard. But hey, you know, that's what happens when you're reading romance, especially when you're reading dark romance with this kind of plot. They're idiots, and as Cardan said, they really should have called a truce earlier than they did, okay? I think I mentioned it in my non-spoiler review. They really are stupid. Like, half of what happens because they're idiots who are stubborn and are mad at each other, okay? That's how it happens. That was, I really do love the fact that tables get turned at the end of this book. Although I do feel like Cardan has slightly more altruistic, better reasoning. Like, I feel like Cardan's reasoning is slightly less suspect, and I will get into that later when we talk about the ending. But we had so many good moments. I loved it. And I love the fact that we kind of, like, at this point, I feel like Jude is the real one that's causing friction in their relationship by about halfway through the book, because I feel like Cardan has just kind of been like, you know, I'm gonna stop fighting this thing. I'm just gonna stop fighting this thing. I think that's what's happened. Yeah, you guys know where he stops fighting it. We all know where he stops fighting it. And Jude is an idiot and is like, it shouldn't have happened, or something like that. I don't remember. I remember that I had 2 books where, like, progress was made. And in both of them, the girl was like, oh, I'm scared my feelings will get hurt, so I'm just gonna tell him that it's not a big deal and it didn't mean what he thinks it means. And I'm just like, can we not be vulnerable for like 2 seconds? No, because it's Jude. Jude would never be vulnerable in her life. Not by choice. It's interesting to see. I have a theory about Cardan, and I'm not sure if it's right, but I do feel like maybe he doesn't like the humans in the first book, but he's still maybe sort of been helping them because he knows what his brother has been doing is wrong. It's one of those things that could be just mentioned to prove how awful Cardan is, but considering his story trajectory, I don't know that that's what it's there for. I feel like it's being held in reserve. I could be wrong though, because we didn't explore it at all in this book, and I wish we had. The fact that he hates Jude so much really does make sense now that we know that Balkan was throwing, or Balakin, I don't know how to pronounce his name, it was throwing Jude's, like, skill in front of him and, like, taunting him with it and goading him with it and being like, if this human can do it, why don't you do it? And it's just because Cardan doesn't like killing people. I don't know if you guys noticed this. On page 40, this purple tab, Jude talks about Cardan and her, what she says hated in the past tense. And if that is not an interesting psychological slip, I don't know what is. Because I don't think she meant to say hated him in the past tense, especially considering conversations that happen later in the book. Considering like all of the I hate yous that are thrown around in 2 different scenes, I feel like she didn't mean to say that in the past tense, and yet there it is. And I wonder if that was intentional or what. I question that. I question that. I love when like he gets shot at and he's like, well, she's like, how did you know it wasn't me? And he's like, they missed. I also love the part where she's talking to the ghost or whoever, and she's like, the High King is very bad at romance. Yes, you're both horrible at romance. I hope you guys know that. All of chapter 15 was amazing. Well, not all of chapter, you know what part of chapter 15 I'm talking about. Was amazing. It was a mess. They are making the worst decisions, and yet you knew it was gonna happen. And then they're just stupid about this entire thing. Like, they can't stay away from each other, but they're still fighting it. And it makes me so happy that they're sitting there, like going, obviously, I hate you. It was just so interesting that I feel like so much of the animosity between Jude and Cardan is the fact that they have been raised to think they should hate each other. That they have been raised to think that the fact that they're attracted to each other is like disgusting and wrong. And there's so much like backstory and hatred on Jude's part because of what the fairies have done, and in some part because of what Cardan has done. That they're just kind of like, they're fighting it, but they're horrible at fighting it, and so instead of like actually fighting it, they're just like driving it and deciding that it's hate. And so they're being awful to each other because they're trying to fight it, and they're fighting it in the most ineffective way that they could fight it because they can't fight it. I really loved when Jude got kidnapped by Ortog, because one, she has this place. Can you see my note? Here, let's see if we can get this to focus. That's it. I was a little surprised that we got that level, but also I absolutely adore the fact that she is freaking out about what Cardan will do without her there to keep him in check. My note is literally, I think he's going to be a little bit too worried to be effective at chaos making. Like, we know he was going out of his mind with worry, and that probably a lot of the debauchery that had been happening was not as debaucherous as it could be, because Cardan is continually preoccupied with the fact that she has gone missing and Ortog has her. My shippy ship heart was fed so well by this book. It shouldn't have been, but it was. How many people have figured out how Cardan and Jude feel about each other? Because they clearly have not figured it out until they possibly have figured it out by the end. But even then, I'm not entirely sure. I think Cardan maybe has figured it out. I don't think Jude has, because I think she's been viewing him as an adversary for so long, when he has not necessarily, like, he's had so much more time to deal with the fact that he likes her. She's had a lot less time to deal with the fact that she likes him. And so I feel like maybe he's got a better grasp on it than she does, possibly. But, like, I just want to know how many people have figured this out, because clearly his brother has. Ortog has. Maddox knows by this point. Her sister probably knows by this point. Locke definitely knows by this point. We're getting there. That whole Queen of Mirth scene I adored. It was amazing. Mostly because Jude just flippin' turns the tables on them. I loved it. Like, they're sitting there trying to humiliate her, and she's like, here, hold on, I can humiliate myself worse. Like, she just takes the power away from Locke, and I loved that. I thought that was such a killer move, even though it is a move that was mortifying. Like, I felt like she handled that so well, or as well as she could without murdering people. I love Cardan's arc in this book, because it goes from him being really pissed at Jude to him like trusting Jude enough that when she surprises him while he's asleep with a knife, right? Is that there? I believe there's a knife involved. I believe there is a knife involved, and his throat. Like, he's still completely relaxed. He's like, oh, it's Jude, I'm fine. Someone is waking him up in the middle of the night. He is the High King, and the minute he knows it's Jude, he relaxes, and that just made me melt. Okay? Jude did not appreciate that as much as she should have. And the fact that he's like, I mean, I know you're not gonna kill me, because if you wanted to kill me, you'd have already killed me by now. Which also, like, I don't think we didn't visit it in this, but isn't there, like, it says in the first book that there's a curse if you try to kill the High King before he surrenders the crown to someone else. So, like, it's so funny how people are sitting there talking about, like, Jude killing Cardan is an option when it's, like, the dumbest thing you can do. Continuing on with that scene where she surprises him in the middle of the night, and then the the roach and the bomb are, like, obviously pop in, and they're like, you're here to kill the king. And she's like, no, I'm not. He'd be dead by now. And Cardan's like, I would be dead by now, which was fantastic. I loved it. But I really like the fact that when she's trying to, they're trying to get her to prove that she cannot be glamored by anyone. I love that when he sees her hesitate, he, like, pauses and is like, is this okay, basically? Like, are you sure? She could be there to kill him. He doesn't think she is, but she could be there to kill him, and he still asks consent before trying to glamour her, which supposedly is not going to work on her at all. And I thought that was such a wonderful moment. Like, not even in a romantic sense, just that, like, he's doing something that he notices makes her uncomfortable, and so he pauses and he says, hey, hold up. Is this okay? That was when I knew he had made huge strides and bounds as a character. Like, I fell in love with him all over again. It's on page 269 if you want to look it up. But I fell in love with him all over again as a character. And with their relationship all over again. Because despite, like, the fact that he could have justified not paying attention to what she wanted, he still, like, took pause and was like, hey, hold up. And made sure she was as comfortable as she could be in the situation. And I really appreciated that. I really did like that moment. It's a very, like, sly moment that you might not, like, it's one of those, like, blink and you miss it moments. And it was there. It was amazing. I loved it. Lady Asha, aka Cardan's mom. Hello, knew it was her. Like, the minute they mentioned that she had a tail, I knew it. I think she's gonna play a much, I guess we're kind of getting towards the ending now, because I feel like she is going to play a much bigger role in the third book. I feel like we are going to, I don't know how, I don't know if we're going to see her having some influence over Cardan. I don't know if it's that something is going to go wrong because Cardan refuses to kill her, or we see her working with some of Cardan's enemies, because clearly she doesn't care about her son all that much. Like, so much about Cardan's character makes sense when you see how he was raised, where she didn't give him attention or affection unless he was being a little piece of crap. Yeah, I think she's going to be interesting and important. Another thing I think is going to be interesting and important in the next book is that crown that Grimson is making, because we had it mentioned a couple of times. So I'm wondering if it might not be a new crown. There are two things I think. Either it's going to end up being a completely new crown for a completely new High King, which, let's be real, the end game of this series is either going to be all of Elfhame completely destroyed, which is possible considering these two, or Cardan and Jude ruling Elfhame together. Like, that's what's going to happen. So I'm not sure if it's going to be just like something's going to happen to Cardan's crown, and so they're going to need this second crown that they could make, or something that I thought would be an interesting thing would be to have a secondary crown that affords, like, it's tied in to the king's crown, so you cannot place it on anyone without the king's permission, basically, because it would be a bad idea to have two such crowns floating around that anybody could place on anybody's head, but, like, that still ties you into the power of the land and still ties you in to the protections that come with the High King's crown. I think that that is where we are headed with that crown. Honestly, that's my personal, like, what I want to happen. So I guess it's time to talk about the ending. Everywhere from when he had her brought to his room to when he proposed that they should get married and they make her Queen of Fairy to him exiling her was just a wild ride for me, okay? Like, I had to put the book down in the middle of him asking her to marry him. In the middle of that whole conversation. No, wait, it was right before he had mentioned that she should marry him and become Queen of Fairy. But I had to put the book down right before that, and oh man, was that so hard. So much of what's going to happen in the next book hinges on what were Cardan's reasons for wanting to marry Jude? Did he just do it because he wanted to trick her into giving up the power that she has over him? Or was he sincere in the fact that he was going to make her Queen of the Fae? And another question that comes to mind is Is there a power in being Queen of Fairy? Would Jude have some power? Is there some way the Fae would be able to tell that she was their queen, the way they kind of can tell that Cardan is their king? I'm just gonna remind everyone on how the wording where Cardan exiles Jude, and he says, I exile Jude Duarte to the mortal world. Until and unless she is pardoned by the crown, let her not step 1 foot in Fairy or forfeit her life. Holly Black tweeted on Twitter that the wording of that last, like that banishment, was important because the wording of everything that a fairy says is important. Like, there are 2 different possibilities, and I think the first time I read it, I kind of like focused on the crown part, because technically, since she's married to Cardan, and I've seen this floating around Twitter as well, so it's not just me that thinks this, but technically, since she's married to Cardan, doesn't that make her the crown? So, like, can she pardon herself? I feel like there definitely was a double message, because Cardan didn't have a choice. Well, he did have a choice. But I feel like of the choices available to him, exiling Jude in a way in which she can come back at any time as soon as she figures out the riddle, like, I feel like that was probably the best choice. I think he did it to protect her, honestly, because he knew Ortag would keep coming after her, because Ortag apparently hates Jude because she got one up on her and she killed her ambassador. I feel like he was like, I need to avoid a war, I need to avoid Jude dying, and so this will appease Ortag and get me some distance from this woman that killed my brother at the same time. I feel like he did what he did for the right reasons. I could be completely wrong, okay? Let's not forget that. I could be completely wrong. But I feel like he did what he did for the right reasons. And like, it wasn't an unforgivable thing. People get banished all the time. It happens all the time in books and people get forgiven. Obviously, if she is the crown, she can pardon herself. But the other thing, like, this is the thing that really got me when I went back after reading Holly Black's tweet, and like, he says, let her not step 1 foot into Fairy. Does that mean that if she re-enters Fairy and both of her feet hit the ground at the same time, does that mean that she will escape all consequences? Is that what it could mean? Does it mean that as long as she doesn't hop around Fairy that she is fine? Like, I don't know. I feel like that's the thing that it's going to hinge on, because like, for the crown thing to work, I feel like more people would have to actually have acknowledged that she was Queen of the Fae, which would have been a very bad thing to acknowledge, with Ortag pissed off at them at the time, and with him needing to manipulate Ortag. And there wasn't really time for them to discuss what was going on, although I really wish Holly had made a time. So I feel like the beginning of the Queen of Nothing will probably start with Jude in the mortal world, but she has to, either Cardan has to come and like be like, I need your help, or she has to figure out, actually it'd be really funny if Cardan showed up like 3 months later and was like, hey, idiot, why haven't you figured this out yet? I would die if that happened, actually, if like the opening of the book is him just basically being like, hello, I made it so you could come, like, you were not actually exiled, I just needed you to think you were, so that you didn't end up dead and we didn't have a war, so can you please come back and help me deal with your dad? Like, that would be hilarious. She probably would try to kill him 4 times before he actually got all of that out. If we're gonna be honest, that would add to the hilarity. Because we've had these 2 books where so much time has been spent in Fairy and in Elfheim, I feel like we're not gonna spend too much time in the mortal world. I don't feel like we're gonna have a lot of time between Jude being like pissed off and mad at Cardan and her going, oh, I know a way to get in to Fairy without dying. I figured out a way around my exile. Like, I feel, because he definitely gave her a loophole. He also said Jude Duarte. But if they're married, technically she could say that her last name, she was no longer Jude Duarte. Technically. Although I'm pretty sure that Cardan Greenbrier is a fandom thing and not like actually official, so that could just be me shooting at the wind. Anyways, like I said, I don't think we're going to see a lot of them separated in the next book, and I would be very sad if they are separated. I feel like there's going to be a lot of tension, a lot of fighting, and that is what I am reading these series for. And then I feel like it's going to be them having to work together again. I hope it is, at least, work together again, get over their differences really early on, because the threats against them are so much bigger than whatever is going on between them. Those are my spoilery thoughts about The Wicked King. I hope you enjoyed that. If you have any, like, listen, talk to me down in the comments about some of the things I've said. Talk to me about some of your favorite stuff. What are your theories? How do you think that Jude is going to get around being exiled? How do you think that's going to resolve? Because clearly for the plot and her to be in Elfheim for most of the book, it's gonna have to get resolved pretty early on, or Cardan's going to have to exile himself, which would work too. I could be okay with that. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Also, hit that subscribe button. I make videos 2 to 3 times a week about books and writing, and I would love to see your lovely face here on a regular basis. If you want more of me, you can find me on Instagram and Twitter. Those are both at the word nerd with a 3 in nerd instead of the E. That is it for now, my friends. Happy reading, and I will see you later when we will talk about more wordy, nerdy things. Bye!